So, Lynn, you've had such an incredible journey in primary science education so far. Just wonder if I could ask you to share a little bit about your background and the fantastic work that you're doing to support teachers and schools.
Sure. Well, you're being very generous. It's odd when someone introduces you like that because I suppose I don't see it like that. I've just done what I've done, and I've had a really blessed opportunity and a great group of people in the primary science sector that's sort of just affiliated with the kind of ideas I've had, and I suppose that's what's made my career what it is. So I started out my career, as you might know, as a primary school teacher. I came from a family which has what you might call a high science capital. My dad was a doctor, mum pharmacist. I suppose science was something that was just always around us, and so was education, because I came from a culture where learning was a really encouraged thing to do, a really worthwhile thing to do. So,
Mm.
yeah, I do love the little ones. I love primary children. I find that I'm very much at home in a primary school and still feel that that is probably my safest and most comfortable place. But I came out of teaching relatively early in my career, got into a higher education environment to do my PhD, and to be quite honest, I've never left. So I spent 14 years at Sheffield Hallam University in a fantastic centre, which was called the Centre for Science Education. It was in its heyday, was absolutely innovating and doing loads of fantastic creative projects under the directorship of Professor Bill Harrison, who's still a very fabulous individual and a lifelong friend. And yeah, that brought me to the University of Manchester, what will be now 11 years ago, to set up SERI. And always working in those years with in-service teachers, in-service primary teachers, still very, very close to the classroom. And yeah, we've rolled with the punches, you might say, to do research, to do innovative projects, to work across the sector and to influence in all sorts of different ways. Yeah, I'm loving it. So thank you for the opportunity to chat today.
I wonder if we could get to know you a little bit more on a personal level with the quickfire five.
Okay,
Would
go for
that be
it.
all right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, question one: what's your go-to comfort food?
Oh, okay. This is easy. Pasta. We are Italian heritage, Maltese heritage. I could eat pasta every day, and as simple as it comes. Sometimes, if I'm not feeling well or anything like that, it's just with butter on. But yeah, my go-to would be pasta, tomato sauce with basil and some pepper, and I'd be more than happy with that pretty much
Classic.
every day.
I'm really interested to know the answer to this. You'll be surprised what skills people have. But what is a surprising or almost sort of lesser known skill that you have?
I'm not, you know, I'm not a yoga teacher. I can't bend over in all sorts of different connotations and ways. I am a good swimmer, but I think what I'd probably go to is, and people at work will know this, is that I am a very competitive and passionate model maker. My three daughters, when they were at a particular school in year seven, got a task to make what they called a landscape in a box. Well, blimey, this was my opportunity to shine. So yeah, we won that competition 3 years on the trot because they didn't
Oh
do it,
wow,
I did, to be quite fair. I loved it. So you had to choose a place in the world, and you had to basically recreate it in a box. There's one of them that's just sitting up here. So the last one we did was San Francisco Bridge, and that was with my youngest daughter. And we've got a moving walkway with cars driving across and motors and all sorts to make that happen. So yeah, I'm a secret competitive model maker.
nice. Okay, okay. Is there any way we could see one? You said it was just up
I
there.
can go get it. Yeah. Right. So here's the latest one. This is what we won
Woo.
with, and you'll be able to see. Can you see the cars coming along?
Oh wow, it actually moves.
Yeah.
That's
So that's
incredible.
San Francisco Bridge and the little people and everybody watching there. So
Wow,
yeah,
the
there you go.
attention to detail as well. Very nice.
Oh yeah, we've got little men on there and ladies all watching, and yeah. So there you go. Secret model
Very
maker.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What a skill. Wow. You are knocking these out of the park here, Lynn. I'm telling you. Okay. Next question. When you are not working, what is one thing that just helps you to unwind?
Yeah, this has changed over time, but now that I've hit the big 50, I get most respite from walking. I used to have to wait for the family to go. Now I'm just going by myself, so I'll walk anywhere around our local area, or I like to go up to the reservoirs up near at Rochdale on a Sunday morning and just feeling
Mm.
that wind on my face. And the only sound is just beautiful nature and whatever's going on in my head. Even last year, I got to the point where I just woke up one Sunday morning and went, right, I'm going to go walk Snowdon. And that was on my
Oh my
bucket
goodness.
list. And
Okay.
within 24 hours, we'd raised about £600 for Christie's hospital. And yeah, we did it. I wasn't great a couple of days after because we hadn't
Yeah.
done much training on that, but we
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
But
I guess you kind of answered this with the trip up Snowdon, but what's another thing on your bucket list that you're
yeah,
determined to
okay.
tick off?
So I think lots of my friends might be able to tell you this one, and this will very much annoy maybe somebody who might do a podcast with at some point,
Oh
Alex
yeah.
Sinclair. So my
Oh,
bucket
okay.
list
I'd
would
love
be to
to.
see Dolly Parton live, without a doubt.
How long have you liked Dolly Parton
Oh,
for? Whole, is
I
it a
think
lifelong
forever.
thing?
I think forever, and she's my go-to motivational song. I also like her not just for her music, but I love what she does for education, for reading, and
Yeah. Okay. So we all know that good science starts with good questions, and questioning is an integral part of doing science. So, how could school science leaders help teachers to embed that culture of meaningful questioning in the classrooms?
well, it's interesting what you said then when you said we all know that good science starts with good questions. I would love it to be the case if we all got that. Um, I'm not
Mm,
sure we have as a sector yet
right.
really understand that the pure science is about asking those critical questions, and the quality of your question will drive all of the evidence that you're going to collect. Have a poor question, too broad, too woolly, not focused enough, it makes an inquiry extremely difficult. Anybody who's done sort of advanced level degrees, PhDs and stuff, it can take a long time to get the right
Mm,
question. And it's about really purifying that question to a point where
yeah.
you are asking a question that no one knows the answer to, because if everyone knows the answer to a question, why would you bother? Like, it's got to find some new knowledge along the way.
Mm,
How do we build a culture for it? Valuing voice,
mm,
valuing multiple questions and not just one question where there's a right and wrong answer. So the way that we've done that in the past, there was one called Working Wonders that we did in Sheffield with a group of schools. There were wonder walls, we had wonder trees, we had wonder anything that would basically visibly and verbally say, we care about the questions that you're thinking about. And here is an
mm,
opportunity in a really safe environment to ask whatever's going on in your head. Like it really is about saying we value questions and actually modeling that then, isn't it? So from head teacher
yeah.
down, to every single person, even to the whoever's on the playground that day, if a child asks a question, maybe the routine would be to ask them a question back. Well, what do you think about that? As opposed to saying, here's the definitive answer. So
Mm,
trying to sort of enable and model that questions lead to questions, and and actually accepting that nobody has it all, and wherever
mm,
you are, I'm still asking questions in my career
yeah.
of what we can do better, what went well, what didn't go so well, where should we be going next, what's the next creative idea that we can embrace. Creating that culture is about sort of the establishment saying questions matter to us, the planning that then comes from that where you can make sure that it's built in, but all the way down to that very responsive culture that between a child and a child, or a teacher and a teacher, where we all know that asking another question is actually a much better thing to do than just answering it straight out, because then you're empowering the learner to find out more or to share what they think.
Actually, it's really interesting what you said there, and it reminds me of, and it links very strongly to something I was talking about with Alex Farah just
Yeah,
last month on our podcast episode. And we were talking about inclusivity, and we were talking about building science capital in the classroom, and how personalization and really empowering the children and making it personal to them
yeah,
is one of the most important things.
yeah,
It builds their science identity. And could you give us sort of a brief
yeah.
overview of QBuild and how that relates to building a question?
It actually stemmed out of really condensing a lot of the experiences that both Tina and I have had. We brought all of that together into a guide which helps teachers really just structure through 3 steps how you can encourage children to ask scientific questions, handle those questions, and then build those questions. And
Mm.
so, really, that process of refinement.
Where could our listeners get a hold of QBuild?
So you just put QBuild,
Okay.
Bianci and Whitaker into a Google search, and you'll come up. Sometimes just check both places because there might be an offer
Mm.
running on one that makes it slightly cheaper than
Okay.
the other. But so Manchester
Nice.
University Press website or Amazon. Yeah,
Amazon. Nice.
yeah.
Okay.
I've not spotted a second-hand copy on eBay yet. Put it that way.
Yeah, no, people don't want to get rid of it. Um, okay, so I guess sort of wrapping that one up, it's about explicitly teaching how to ask questions as
Why on earth are we not teaching them how to, and the other thing is that when we're doing an inquiry, can we please start with a question?
yeah.
And maybe that's just a really easy first filter to anybody in a staff room.
Mm.
Look at your inquiry, look at what you're doing with your practical work. If it says forces investigation as the title, then it's not a question. The
Yeah.
child's going to find it very difficult to draw a conclusion if it says forces. How does this affect this? How what are we trying to look? We're looking for a pattern
Mm.
for what. But you've got to start with a question, even if you are giving the children that question. And you're not always going to, as we know from Sarah Earle's work with TAPS teaching assessment in primary science, you don't always have to do the whole inquiry cycle. So there will be times where you just give them the question and you're focusing on other skills. It is a
Yeah.
fundamental skill if you really want it to happen.
Okay, so we've gone into quite a lot of depth there about the importance of scientific questioning and teaching it explicitly, doing it in the right way so that the children understand that that's sort of the first level of the scaffold of doing any sort of investigation or science inquiry. And then the other side of it as well that we wanted to talk about today was about collecting and communicating the evidence that they then get from that question. So I think helping the students to collect the evidence is one thing, and then helping them to communicate it's another. So I just wonder if we could get some ideas for strategies that science leaders and teachers could use to make this process of
Mm-hmm.
collecting and communicating evidence more effective.
Okay, good question. So let's just unpick a little bit your question. So you focused in there not just on on what the question is doing. The question, and this is what we defined as a scientific question. A question is one which will lead to a child gathering evidence. If it doesn't lead to a child gathering evidence, then in all honesty, it's probably in a different realm somewhere else. This isn't us being like radically um, nuanced. We're building on people's work like Anne Goldsworthy in the Axis Project and this
Mm.
kind of thing. This is where we were feeding off and our experience, and we had really fantastic opportunities to talk with Anne. Gathering evidence, measuring something, being able to record that, that science is when we'll gather in evidence, and whichever different forms of evidence that might be. If we go into what people think and what they say, it's more down the social sciences, isn't it? If children of different age phases are still doing the similar kind of inquiries, often around plant growth, what does the plant need to grow, and you see it in the early years, and then you see it again in key stage 1, and you see it again in key stage 2. But I would ask that teachers initially ask the questions, what do you think? What do we already know, before you just plow on? Because otherwise we're just having a very nice time handling some equipment, but actually
Yeah.
you're not moving their knowledge or addressing any misconceptions on. So really trying to get a question which is going to change something within the children's thinking. So once we've got all of that, how do we then share it? And so this really does speak to thinking and working as a scientist. And in this environment where I'm here at the University of Manchester in a Faculty of Science and Engineering, we've got some of the most prestigious science Nobel Prize winners, all sorts here. And when I look and I think, well, how do they communicate? On a very rare occasion, they'll do a full scientific write-up in a book. Very, very rarely. When you look at the work of Royal Society Fellows and some of the beautiful things that the Royal Society show, and they've got, scientists work in jotters in all sorts of different ways to be able to communicate their science. Of course, we publish through academic articles and peer-reviewed journals, because that's where you build obviously the
Mm.
integrity, the credibility and the reliability of that data, because it's been handled in a particular way. So you've got that on one extreme, but on the other extreme, there's all sorts of things. Pint of science. You're standing in a pub, and a PhD student is communicating to the public audiences in a short 5 minute thing about their science. That's just as valid. It's just a different audience for different purposes.
Mm.
We've worked in the past with artists, with musicians, with dance groups. We had a scientist in physics once. Her name was Rowan, and she published her PhD thesis through a piece of dance with, I think it was called Kapow Dance Studio or something like that. That was part of the Great Science Share. So I
Wow.
think communicating science really can be all things to all people. The key thing is what you want it to achieve and which audience are you trying to hit. And what Great Science Shares allowed us to do is really focus our opportunity on what it means to share. The national curriculum and the way that we work in school is still predominating working books. I
Yeah.
think that's driven from a slightly different place. I don't think it's driven from a place of how do we best represent science. I think it's driven from a place which is how do I show accountability as a teacher that I've done the hours that I need to do to
Hmm.
prove to somebody that I've done my job. That doesn't always marry with what's the best way to communicate science evidence. So I think there is a challenge there, but I absolutely appreciate where it's coming from. Um, I think Sarah's work in TAPS has been really encouraging and sector shifting in encouraging teachers that they don't have to do a full scientific write up after
Yeah.
every piece of work, and really saying what's this piece of practical work or what's this inquiry doing. Okay, it's helping us really support a child doing a prediction. Well, that's the bit that we'll record, that's the bit that we'll share on this particular occasion, or conclusion building, or looking at evidence, or presenting graph, whatever it might be. That seems to have lightened the load on teachers a little bit to be able to
Mm.
say, okay, now I know which bit to put in the book because that's what we're going to mark and that's what we're going to feed back on. But for me, the variety of communication streams is as broad as your mind can take it, really.
That's given me some ideas for our upcoming term 3 science fair. You know, so normally I ask the children to use a poster and do like a practical example of whichever question it is they're answering. But yeah, I never thought of encouraging them to communicate it in different ways and opening up that platform, let them be more creative. And I wonder if that leads us on to talk a little bit about the Great Science Share, because you've mentioned it a few times there, and how you're driving forward this way of communicating evidence through the Great Science Share or as part of it. I wonder if you could give us a little insight into that.
Okay, so Tim, I'd love to see what your young people share, and actually you could actually build that into the Great Science Show without a problem. And I think, to be quite honest, some of the ways that I probably talked about are probably showing my age as well, because nowadays you'll have all sorts of young people sharing through TikTok and Insta and digital means
Mm.
in much more exciting ways than possibly I've mentioned, but they should still be embraced, because that is another means by which we get to lots of diverse audiences, isn't it? So the Great Science Share started, well, we'll be 10 years old this year. It was Wacky Dream on a train in November, 12 years ago. And I was coming back from London. It was the night of Children in Need. And I wasn't with my kids at the point. I'm thinking, why am I coming back from London again? I was a bit despondent, wet and rainy and cold. And I'd been down to London again, and I was banging on about primary science not having the visibility and value that it should do
Mm.
against other subject areas. And we still bang on that. Here we are in 2025. And I decided to stop moaning and do something about it. And I walked into the office where a colleague of mine, Toby Tyler, was. I said, I've had an idea. I said, what I want is, I said, I want children in need, but I want it for primary science. Okay, so I'm not saying that I've done a children in need for primary science, but what we
Yeah.
basically distilled that down to is that we wanted a campaign that would really do this at scale. And what do I mean by do this? It would mean that we would encourage children to ask, investigate, and share a scientific question. Oh, so well, now 10 years later, I still pinch myself. We launched our guided inquiries last week, and yeah, we're in about 40 odd countries. 700,000 young people are registered onto the campaign. Schools all over the place, and it's non-competitive, so we're seeing it grow because we're not judging people. We're saying get involved, take part. There's a mass movement here to try and get young people asking, investigating, and sharing. We've seen it's improved the opportunities for practical work, the freedom that teachers give, that children can ask and investigate questions that maybe they've wanted to, but they've maybe felt that the curriculum stifled a little bit. We've found opportunities to link with real world research, with global sustainability goals. It's just a really joyful way of saying at this key time in the year this is what we're gonna celebrate. And value goes back to the first question, isn't it, really?
Mm.
So yeah, it's open access. Just go on the website www.greatscienceshare.org and sign up. It's free to sign up. You can do Great Science Share anywhere and anyhow you wish. You don't have to do the guided inquiries. We put those out as a stimulus should teachers wish to have a look at them. But you can just do something that the children have loved doing all year and do it again, or you can do something new that they're interested to ask. It is quite free in that way. But as I say, we keep to the values of it's got to be child-led, it's inclusive and non-competitive, and we encourage collaboration. So this is the time to enable the children to meet other children, meet other schools, come and join in events if there's a big event going on, or just to do it with another class. It doesn't have to be enormous in any way, shape, or form. And it's growing. We've got UNESCO patronage now, national UNESCO patronage. We're working with other countries to structure and support them to get involved. And so you'll see that going into UNESCO Mediterranean countries. Malta, we're working with colleagues in Spain. I've just been in touch with a school in India. We've had it happening in Australia. Nepal up a hillside.
Wow.
It really is, and we say it's for 5 to 14-year-olds because that's where our expertise is. We rally to a day in the year which is in June, 17th of June. The main thing today is get involved. It doesn't matter if it's on that day, if it's with 2 or 20 or 200 children, just be part of it.
Yeah.
Just be part of a movement that says questions matter, children's voices matter, we value it. Inquiry and getting children to ask questions is something that we should all be championing.
Yeah, it sounds like it lives up to its name, the Great Science Share. And before we finish up, are there any final pieces of advice or one last insight you'd like to share with science leaders just looking to strengthen science practice, questioning, evidence, communication, anything at all?
Never stop asking questions. None of us know it all. You said that I was humble a bit. I'm not. I just will continue to be a learner, and everyone comes into primary science at some point, and there's a great community, and all you need to do is put a question out on an X feed, on a Facebook feed, just pop us an email. The community is so rich. The people that you've just already mentioned, the people that have been on your podcast, everybody will want to help. So all you need to do is reach out, and there is such a fantastic group of people who are passionate about this space, myself included. Lynne Bianci at manchester.ac.uk. Ask me anything. I'm here to help. I'm here to support. I'm not judging anybody. If you want to improve the way that you do primary science in your school, go for your life. I'd love to spend whatever time I've got free to help you. I've never shut that door at anyone. And just make sure that you ask and keep the door open and keep learning.
Amazing. Lynne, thank you very, very much for your time today.
No, it's okay.
Much appreciated.
All right. And you?
And that's it, everyone, for this episode of the Primary Science Podcast, the Science Leaders Toolkit. A huge thank you to Professor Lynne Bianci for sharing her expertise with us. And we've covered so much with her, from fostering a culture of great science questioning to helping students communicate their findings in new and creative ways. And then the possibility of supplementing these practices with things like the Great Science Share. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And I'll see you all next month on the next episode of the Primary Science Podcast, Science Leaders Toolkit, where we'll be talking to the one and only Bryony Turford about what she thinks the perfect primary science lesson might look like. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye for now.